UFC 298 in the books. Ritik, क्या लग रहा है यार? The curse of 35 and over continues. Some fighters show nothing like ring rust exists. Paulo Costa shout out. And not all Russians can avoid being out grappled and choked to someone. What do you think, yaar? How was the card? Let's discuss from top to bottom, and then obviously we'll also talk about what happens next in each division.
Yeah, man, for sure, bro. Like, this has been one of the saddest cards in recent times because nobody, I mean, of course, a lot of people were expecting कि भाई knockout loss से आया है तो भाई कुछ तो रहेगा चिन में इशू लेकिन कोई बात नहीं यार अब तो this has been a passing of the torch as well. So in a way, I'm glad कि हाँ भाई division has been moving forward कि भाई अब तो नए
Yeah.
prospects देखेंगे newer generation वाले fighters आएंगे but at the same time again वो I just hope he gets enough rest and comes back stronger than ever. But हाँ overall good card I would suggest. Yeah मतलब बढ़िया
Oh,
था card.
very, very good card, yeah. I think a solid 8.5 on 10. And I think
Yeah.
in recent times, a lot of divisions had kind of gone dead because the champions had done like a round over and beat a lot of opponents. So in that way, featherweight division भी एक तरह से refresh हो गई है, which is a
हम्म
great thing. So
बिल्कुल भाई
let's get
बिल्कुल.
started, yeah. Let's get started and start with our first fight, Theo Hernandez versus Roman Kopylov.
Uh,
How did you think this fight went? Anything different? Did you expect a different outcome? Did you expect exactly what happened? Tell me about it, bro.
भाई तो पहली बात तो यार दिस फाइट वाज बेसिकली just to test where Kopilov is at right now, just to see where his grappling is at right now. Because the big question coming into this fight was if he can like deal with the takedowns, right, of Anthony Hernandez. And by quite frankly, he's an elite striker, right? रोमन कॉपिलोव.
Right.
बट सबसे पहली फाइट जो थी उसकी डेब्यू फाइट थी भाई ही गॉट सबमिटेड राइट ही गॉट सबमिटेड एंड वाया रियर नेकेड चोक एंड दिस हैज़ बिन अ ट्रेंड लाइक इन हिज करियर कि मतलब भाई यही होता रहेगा अगर वो ग्रैपलिंग अगर इम्प्रूव नहीं करेगा तो बिकॉज
Mm.
you know he's from Dagestan and one of the weirdest things is that every person from Dagestan happens to be really good at grappling but somehow
Right.
this guy isn't so good at grappling. And
Right.
Anthony Hernandez, when it comes to Anthony Hernandez, so he was number 15 right before the fight and Kopilov का टेस्ट था कि भाई he's getting the first ranked fighter and भाई उसमें the one thing that I like about Anthony Hernandez is that he does not give up at all. He just keeps going over and over again. He just won't stop. मतलब एकदम relentless cardio बंदे की and the way he sticks to his opponent once he gets a hold of his opponent, the way he sticks to the opponent is insane. Like I think he's one of the better grapplers in the division. He's quite small also for the division, which makes the even more impressive in my opinion. So Kopilov obviously tried to just keep distance,
Mm.
keep it by using his kicks. Obviously, he's an elite kicker, like one of the best kickers in the division. But it wasn't it wasn't anything too impactful because ultimately Hernandez he did a really good job of cutting the gap, cutting the space, and just smothering him basically. What did you think about the fight?
It's so weird, bro, that a Dagestani for a change is trying to keep distance and not close in and trying to get a takedown.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Honestly, our first fight that I saw both fighters actually fighting in an octagon on a main card. And I think first round was pretty even, exactly like you said, that Kopilov was trying to maintain distance, trying to outstrike him. But eventually, I think you saw that Hernandez grew into the fight. He was trying to close in the distance by throwing that overhand right every now and then. Eventually, he got a takedown, and the rest, as we know, is history. He got the finish.
Right,
And
right, right.
even for a second, for some reason, मुझे Kopilov in any grappling exchange comfortable नहीं लगा.
Hmm.
Like not comfortable at all.
That's the key
Like
thing.
he did not have any answer for whatever Hernandez was doing, which I feel is a little perplexing because if you belong to that belt of the world, आप expect करोगे that you have some amount of grappling.
For sure.
So I mean, ठीक है, it happens. I think exceptions are everywhere.
And what
But good
I
fight.
what I thought was not very impressive from Kopilov was that if you see the way he like if you've seen his debut fight against Carl Robertson, he fought in 2019. He made his debut in 2019 on the Zabit versus Calvin Kattar card, and the way he got submitted and just just all the grappling exchanges that he had in that fight, and if you compare that fight with this fight, it just seems like he hasn't made any improvement at all in the last what 5 years now. Since it was in 2019, so it's been 5 years, and we haven't seen any significant improvement in his grappling. So, and what the deal is with the ranked fighters in any division, like you have to be some sort of you either have to be very elite at what you do, like if there's one discipline that you're focusing on, you have to be very good at it, या फिर अगर तुम भाई ऐसा कर सकते हो कि you can be at least be average at other disciplines and be good at one discipline, ऐसा कर सकते हो, but that has not been the case with Kopilov. While he is a very good striker, he has not been able to dominate his fights with his striking only. He was on a good streak though, but I think he should either get a striker as a striker matchup now, just to boost his confidence maybe, because he certainly has the talent, especially when it comes to striking. But again, the big question will always remain about his grappling.
Or do you think it's time for him to really get that military cut and start training with Khabib and Javier Mendez at AK in California? Is that the next step?
I mean, it could be. It could be. I mean, the way, like, what we have seen in Dagestan is that every single guy is good at like wrestling or just some sort of grappling, right? Mainly, it's the sambo over there. So I'm sure he can find a gym to train, and I'm sure he knows what he has to do. It's, because if you look at his game, there's not much missing from his game other than just grappling, right? Which is again a big deal, a very big thing, right? So for sure, like if
Right.
he can, get into a gym where in Dagestan maybe, like not only it does not just have to be AKA, but yeah, he's got to improve his grappling. Yeah.
He definitely has to. He definitely has to. So yeah, as I can see in the rankings, Hernandez has moved up 2 spots from 15 to 13th,
Hmm.
and I mean the fighters in his vicinity जिनसे वो लड़ सकता है are probably Paul Craig, Roman Dolidze, and Hamzat Chimaev. But I think that Chimaev fight is far from happening because the power that Chimaev has is too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think happens for both fighters यार from here on? एक unranked है, एक 13th है division में, and
Hmm.
nowhere but to move upwards from this point for
So
Hernandez.
I think Anthony Hernandez obviously he's not going to fight Hamza Chimaev, and I don't think he's going to fight Paul Craig, because Paul Craig has been fighting at welterweight for some time now, for the past couple of fights. So, and I think he likes the welterweight cut also. Like he's not really bothered about it. So I think Anthony Hernandez, for him, the next two guys after him are Chris Curtis and Caio Borralho, right? So I think the way I see it, if they can match him up with Chris Curtis, that could be a very interesting fight, because again, uh, as much as Chris Curtis hates to fight against grapplers or point fighters, like he has to prove that he's belongs in those higher rankings. So I think that's the fight to make next, because both of them are coming off of a win. So I think that's the perfect fight right now for Anthony Hernandez. But when it comes to Kopilov, again, we'll have to again set him up with an unranked fighter. An unranked fighter, it could be a striker, or if it's a grappler, it could be a very sad run for him, sad two consecutive fights for him. But yeah, I mean, to boost his
Definitely.
confidence, I think if I'm the matchmakers, I would give him a striker first, just to see if he's
Hmm.
still in it or not, and then we can just give him a grappler just to test his grappling. Yeah.
Yeah, it would take a lot to offer and convince Anthony Hernandez to actually fight Chris Curtis because Chris Curtis is 14th and Hernandez is 13th.
Hmm.
Uh, what do you think about Jack Hermanson? Just a few rankings above him,
That's a
not really in the title mix, kind of kind of a gatekeeper of the division. So
solid,
that fight
solid.
also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, solid gatekeeper, and that's the thing, man. Like Jack Hermanson, he just भाई वो बंदा मतलब ऐसा करता है कि वो कोई भी किसी भी बंदे की हाइप हो रही हो, वो उसको वहीं पर रोक देता है। किसी भी
Huh,
फाइटर की हाइप हो, उसे वहीं पे ख़त्म कर देता है।
definitely.
तो इसलिए इट कुड बी अ वेरी बैड फाइट फॉर एंथनी हर्नांडिस, बिकॉज mind you, Jack Hermanson, he's got a Greco-Roman base in wrestling, right? And he has turned into a very good striker. And I think when it comes to just point fighting, maintaining the distance, he has just mastered every single fundamental. Like he's the king of fundamentals in the division, I would say. Like उस बंदे ने जिस तरीके से क्रिस कर्टिस को पूरा ब्रेक डाउन किया था भाई, पूरा क्रिस कर्टिस को जिस तरीके से हराया, एंड इन हिज लास्ट फाइट इज वेल, मतलब जिस तरीके से ये फाइट को अप्रोच करता है, इट्स लाइक इट्स एलीट, लाइक ही गॉट एलीट गेम प्लानिंग, राइट? स्ट्रेटजीज आर एलीट, I think it could be a great fight for Jack Hermanson because he's a very bad matchup for Anthony Hernandez, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, for that matter, bad matchup for anyone in the division, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Because he can like you always use that phrase. He can always give you that fraud check,
Yeah, for sure.
and know if you're about that life in that division, and even if you're worth moving up the ranks.
Hmm.
But talking about elite, yeah, I think Mirab versus Henry Cejudo. I think the former elite champ of the division, the cream of the crop, versus Mirab, who really showed that there are levels in this game. He was absolutely dominant and elite in this fight against Cejudo.
Yeah, man. It was again. It was sort of sad for me because I like Henry Cejudo. I'm a huge fan of him, and But then again, we talked about this in the beginning also. Like the age of 35 plus inactivity, you can't just hang around like with the top guys. It's just it's impossible. And I'm gonna go off track a bit. And a lot of people say a lot of people are excited for Connor's return, but I'm telling you, man, like when you're out for that long, when you're out for that long, and you are not training with that same hunger, it's just damn near impossible. It's damn near impossible.
Yes,
But
it is.
again, credit to Henry. Ideally, like if it was any other fighter, like you would expect them to get absolutely destroyed in a scenario like this because who has he fought till now? He fought Aljamain Sterling, who was the champion, the best bantamweight at that time, and now he's fought Merab, who I don't know. Everybody thinks he's the best bantamweight. Everybody is convinced that he's going to beat Sean O'Malley or Chito Vera, right?
Mm,
So he has fought the two best guys in the division, Henry, and
definitely.
he at of course, yeah, Mirab dominated him in the third round, but then again he took one round from Mirab, which has impressed me a lot. That was very impressive. And again, Aljamain Sterling, again it was a split decision loss for him. So while it wasn't the case that he got destroyed by these two guys, it was also disappointing because if he was in his prime, if he was still in his prime, if he hadn't retired, maybe he could have, maybe he could have won. You never know, right? But then again, we have to give credit to Mirab. We can't take anything from his victory because he did exactly what everyone thought he would do. Right? He pushed forward. He kept coming at Henry over and over again. He the cardio is always insane for this guy. I mean, I've heard Ray Longo said after the fight that he basically had a 15-minute sparring session with Aljamain Sterling, proper 15-minute sparring session
Yeah,
before he
I heard.
went out. So amazing, man, amazing. I'm so excited for Mirab. I don't know if the UFC is as excited for him, but personally, I'm a huge fan of him now because he has won me over, even though he beat my two of my favorite fighters from the division, Jose Aldo and Peter Yan. But he has won me over. He's just so funny, and again, he works tirelessly hard, man.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the machine for a reason, and he definitely lived up to that name. I mean, like I said, he could have fought for another 2 rounds easily, if not three.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
looked, he was in there and everything, yeah. I mean, especially I think the moment of the entire card when he picked up Henry Cejudo of all the people, Triple C, Olympic champion, put him on the ground and was talking to Mark Zuckerberg. I think that was probably one of the highlights of the card.
That was crazy. That was crazy. That was so sick. That's one of the reasons why. And when you're in Mirab's position, where some people are questioning whether he should be fighting for the title next, because some people think maybe his style is not as interesting. Like a lot of people said that after he fought Peter Yan, but I think his style is good enough. if
Good
if
enough.
if the other fighter is not a huge fan favorite, I mean, the antics in the cage, I'm all for it. Like I love it. I absolutely love what he did with Henry when he was he was talking to Zuck. It was amazing, and he's got to do it like just to improve his star power even more.
The
Yeah.
antics even remind me of the color red that you and I are wearing. He took O'Malley's jacket and wore it a few fights ago.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
remember.
Obviously, that was
That
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 that was
that,
hilarious.
that, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
But nahin yaar, I mean, I have a slightly different view. I don't know what other people say, but the kind of cardio that Merav has showed in a while, uh, he can really give the champion a run for his money in the championship rounds. And you
Absolutely.
want to see that because I think judges का थोड़ा tilt होता है towards scoring the fight in the champ's favor when you're at the championship rounds and you're fighting for the belt. So I think Merab is someone जिसकी game actually बहुत shine करके निकलेगी rounds 4 and 5 में, especially how good he actually looked in
बिल्कुल
this
बिल्कुल
particular fight.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल
Uh, and moving to Cejudo, yeah, so as of 12 to 15 hours ago, news आई है that Cejudo has announced that he is not going to be retiring, which is heartbreak for all of us, especially when we've seen fighters over 35 like Usman, Tony, Volk face that kind of downfall. So where do you think Henry goes from here, यार? बुरा तो लग रहा है, but I don't
भाई
know.
सच बोलूं तो I'm sort of like I'm sort of confused because in Tony's case, let's say, or in Volk's case, like we could see कि भाई like I'm in the I obviously will talk about later on, but Volk वाली fight में भी भाई you just had that feeling, right, कि it's going to happen anytime. Like it's like Ilya is going to like shut his lights off. Like it, you just had that feeling कि वो आ रही थी फिर
Yeah,
because वो नॉकआउट से ही आया था. एंड अब वो वाली फीलिंग 10 टाइम्स और बढ़ जाएगी अगर वो रीमैच करेगा. लेट्स फॉरगेट रीमैच, किसी से भी लड़ेगा वो नेक्स्ट, तो हमें वो फीलिंग आएगी कि भाई देयर इज अ वेरी गुड पॉसिबिलिटी कि ये फिर से आउट हो जाए. एंड सेम
mm,
केस था टोनी फर्गसन का. ठीक है, व्हेन ही टुक दैट बीटिंग फ्रॉम जस्टिन, obviously myself included, a lot of fans were delusional. But we
yeah,
are at a point where we just know he's going to lose. There's no hope because he's just not there anymore. But in the case of Henry and Usman, we haven't really seen them getting destroyed. Like as I said before, he lost to Henry lost to two of the best bantamweights in the world, right? And while he
definitely.
got
And in the prime.
while he got dominated in the third round, I get where he's coming from, but what is his ultimate goal? That's the thing. What does he want to achieve now in his career? He has achieved pretty much everything there is to achieve, right? He's got two belts, title defenses in both divisions. Like, not a lot of fighters are able to do that. A lot of fighters are
Yes.
double champs, but they haven't defended the belts in both the divisions. He's got an Olympic gold medal. So one thing that I think everybody can say for sure is that Henry is never going to like be a champ again, right? Probably,
Yeah.
like most likely, he's never going to be champ again. So what is he like trying to achieve at this point in his career? Does he have a few good fights in him? Can he win the next fight if he, let's say, fought someone like Corey or Sandhagen or someone outside the top five rankings? Maybe he can win. I'm sure he's got the skills. He's still right up there with the best guys. But then again, what the ultimate goal of Henry is, ये हमें नहीं पता भाई. वो चाहता क्या है अल्टीमेटली, वो हम कभी बता नहीं सकते.
So there was some speculation here heading into this fight that Henry Cejudo को injury है.
हाँ,
In my opinion, in a way laga because I felt he was too static on the feet, not a lot of bouncing around and moving around from his point.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
But I feel even if that is said, then you can't really take away the credit that Mirab actually deserves after this fight because ठीक है, I mean, let's even consider the injury was there, but the kind of beating that Mirab actually put on Cejudo, he was absolutely there, and he was out there to
बिल्कुल
win. You could see it.
बिल्कुल
The
बिल्कुल.
first round, arguably, you could score in either of them's favor, but it was very close. Second and third was a clean sweep by Mirab.
I think first round
Uh,
तो चल I would give it to Henry because he had Mirab hurt at one point, so he landed the
right.
hardest shot. But हाँ, I think you're right. Even if regardless of whether Henry was injured or not, and because he's not making excuses for he's not saying कि भाई मैं injured था तो मैं हार गया. Because he's not doing that, I think we shouldn't use that argument as fans.
Yeah.
Again, for Mirab, I think whether Henry is injured or not, Mirab is the hardest fight for any guy in the division,
Yes. Yes.
and he can
Yes.
do that all day long to anyone, to
Yeah.
anyone. Like अगर वो Henry अपने prime में भी आता उस दिन, तो मेरे हिसाब से Mirab फिर भी कर लेता, वो चीज़ possible थी बिल्कुल. Just the size difference is insane between the two guys. Henry, I don't think people realize this. A lot of people are quick to hop on the bandwagon and say things like, "Oh look, Mirab is just ragdolling a gold medalist from the Olympics."
Mm.
But people do not know this, but Henry Cejudo won the gold medal at 121 pounds. He was that small, and he
Yeah.
competed for the most part in the UFC at flyweight, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you look at him still, like he's easily the smallest bantamweight out there, right? I
Mm.
can't think of any bantamweight that is smaller in size than Henry Cejudo. The size difference between him and Merab was insane. Like Merab looks like a proper featherweight, although he's
Mm.
not a featherweight. He's fighting bantamweight, but he looks like he's one of the biggest. Like I think
He's
after
pretty
Aljo,
muscular.
he's probably the biggest
Yeah.
bantamweight. Yeah.
Yeah. Hot take. Where does Cejudo go from here? I have a very interesting match in my mind
What is it?
because it's Davison Figueiredo. Flyweight से आ रहा है, probably one of the smaller
Ah,
bantamweights. Henry has dropped down 3 spots. He's number 6. Figueiredo is somewhere around 8. Both are former flyweight champions.
you're right. You're right.
And I mean, either if that guy defeats the other guy is a rise in stocks. What do you think? I mean,
यार
pretty good fight.
सबसे पहली बात तो यार अभी हेनरी सेउडो डेविसन फिगरेडो को ट्रेन कर रहा था कुछ टाइम पहले तक सो एक एक वो भी बहुत बड़ी बात है तो वेदर दे विल फाइट और नॉट दैट इज अ बिग क्वेश्चन आई थिंक दैट विल बी अ बिग रीजन एज टू व्हाई दे वोंट फाइट
Okay.
अगर हम hypothetical से जाके देखते हैं तो for sure it would be a great fight because you know
Great fight.
both guys are pretty small for the division and you know
Yeah.
although Figgy is quite big but like फाइट तो बहुत इंसेन होगी दोनों की अगर हुई तो बट
बहुत
लाइक
ज़्यादा.
वही है आई थिंक बिकॉज दे हैव ट्रेन्ड विद ईच अदर एंड आई फील लाइक फिगी हैज अ लॉट ऑफ रिस्पेक्ट फॉर हेनरी आई थिंक ही वोंट साइन द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट if the UFC approached him for that fight. I think the most interesting fight for Henry is, and I know a lot of Corey fans will hate this, but I think Corey Sandhagen is a great fight for Henry. Not only for Henry, but also for Corey. Like, you know, just to
Hmm.
if he beats Henry, a former like a two division champ, one of the greatest fighters of all time, his resume will be insane. Like Corey's resume will be so crazy, and उसके बाद तो कोई doubt ही नहीं होगा that he is going to fight for the title. और क्या ही करना चाहिए बंदे और क्या ही कर लेगा बंदा. Aljamain
And
ऊपर चला गया, हेनरी और वो मिराब वेट कर रहा है उन दोनों का तो बस.
definitely, yeah. And I mean, I'll be very honest. I have been rubbing my hands for this for a long time. O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen is something that really excites me.
For sure,
That
for
would
sure.
be one good fight. So I
और
would love to see that.
same.
And Mirab, I think it's very obvious. Title fight next after Chito Vera and O'Malley happens.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And Sean even came out and said that uh, he got a lot of he took a lot of criticism from fans when he was talking about fighting Topuria. So he's now like, I should fight Mirab because you know the fans are against the idea of him fighting Topuria. But let's be real. Let's be real. If Sean beats Chito Vera in a dominant fashion, UFC is all
Yeah.
about money. You know, it's Dana White is all about the business, and that's the reality of things. Like, अगर वो शॉन जाकर डोमिनेंट विन करता है तो भाई there's a very good chance कि Tupuria versus Sugar Sean Wali is the next fight. But of course, if we are being fair, then Mirab should be next. And after Mirab, I think Corey does not even need to take another fight. I think he should just wait
I
out.
agree.
He should just
I
wait out
agree.
the rest of the year. But then again, does he want to be that inactive? Especially considering the style he has, like he would want to be stay active, right? But then,
And
but then that's the thing. Like Mirab has cemented his place now.
Corey doesn't even come across as the guy who would back out
Yeah.
from a fight just because he's in a good spot and he might get a title shot next.
Hmm.
So, ठीक है. I mean, he could wait it out, but at the same time, I think Corey can take another fight
But
in
the
the division.
matchup Sean and Corey that excites me man. मतलब वो क्या insane fight होगी भाई.
बहुत ज़्यादा insane fight.
बहुत ही ज़्यादा
Definitely.
crazy fight.
So great, yeah. I mean, great card till now, and obviously the next fight, I think Ian Gary and Jeff Neal, everyone saw it going a certain way, and I think most of the people were right.
Yeah. I think
Ian Gary did what he had to do, fought on
yeah.
the outside, got the kicks in, fought at range. Jeff Neal could not really figure him out,
Hmm.
but by the time he actually could figure him out, I think it was too late, and the fight was by and large tilted in Ian Gary's favor.
True. I
Did you
think
expect anything different?
just as everyone expected, I thought so the way I saw it was a bit different. Like, of course, yeah, we all predicted that Ian would fight from distance, and he was use his kicks to just to piss Neil off. But I thought his boxing, Jeff Neal's boxing, like it's insane. Like I think he's one of the best boxers in the division. Probably JDM is slightly better, not slightly. I think JDM is a lot better than Jeff Neal in terms of boxing, pure boxing. But I think Jeff Neal is right up there, like top three, if not the second best boxer in the division. So after watching his fight against Rakhmonov, I thought by Jeff Neal ki boxing would be a problem for Ian Gary. And if you're looking at it purely from a boxing versus boxing matchup, तो भाई he struck in the head a lot of times. Like I think he outstruck when it comes to when it comes to head strikes. Neil outstruck Gary, right? But then again, it's of no use because Ian Gary's kicks are just insane. And I think
Very
I'll have
nice.
to say this because as much as I find it funny the way the fans talk about Ian Gary, I think it was a great response by Ian Gary. To face so much criticism from the fans and to come out with that performance, it was really good. But again, I don't think. Neil's stocks kind of dropped, but I get it. A lot of fans thought him clinching towards the cage was a bad idea, and I get it. I think so too. He just stuck to his game plan, which is again not a good thing. A lot of people think just sticking to the game plan is the right thing to do. But to me, mid fight adjust करना चाहिए, like most elite fighters do. Mid fight adjust करना is a very important thing, and his coaches kept telling him not to dap Ian Gary up, and he kept dapping Ian Gary up. He just showed too much respect to Ian Gary, in my opinion. But then again, yeah, it's what we expected from Ian Gary. You know, we thought he should win, and he did win. Yeah.
Right. So, as things stand, yeah, new ranking updates, and Ian Gary has moved up 4 places in the division. He's
Hmm.
at number 6,
Right.
and
Right.
the guy
Right.
who's above him is Colby Covington. And one of our dream matches here that we spoke about last time,
Yeah.
Gary versus Stephen Thompson. अब नहीं लग रहा वो fight होगी because Thompson is below Gary in the
Hmm.
rankings.
Hmm.
So Thompson would have to pull off something in order to take that Gary match. But I think from here, I think there is already a good storyline, a very good press conference in place because of the trash talk aspect. There is history, so and
Absolutely.
why not Colby Covington versus Ian Gary? Yeah, why not?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल and it's the perfect time for Ian Gary to fight someone who is not a striker. Like
Who's
the
on?
biggest
Yeah,
questions surrounding his skills have been whether he'll be able to take on a grappler or not, take on a wrestler or not. Colby more is more of a wrestler rather than a submission artist. So he's a relentless wrestler, right? But again, as I said, it's about the timing, right? Colby Covington, if this was 2 years ago, I would have favored Colby heavily over Ian Gary.
heavily. Yeah,
Even if it was against the current Ian Gary. I mean, but again, I think this is how the UFC shapes everything up. I think this will be the perfect matchup for them because it will sell like crazy. It will sell like crazy, and Ian Gary will have a very good chance to beat Colby. Now that he's very old, his activity is has been not just outside of the cage, but like inside of the cage as well. Like against Leon, he just looked so slow.
he,
He looked
he looked
so
so
not
slow.
not interested and all. He came out saying he had an injury, which he revealed like
In submission ready.
after a very
Yeah.
long time. So it's not. I'm not gonna say it's not believable, but then sounds like he's making up excuses, right? So yeah, for if you're the UFC, that's the fight to make, in my opinion, because it's the perfect time for Ian Gary to make his argument that he can hold his own against the best wrestlers in the division, and this will be his first real test in terms of wrestling. And again, it's just one of those fights where the younger guy is just set up to beat the older guy, older legend, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's high time that uh, Colby Covington fought at a co-main event and not a main event, and not for a belt because he's had enough title shots. And it's high time that Ian Gary actually gets a co-main event to begin with. So I don't see this actually being the highlight of the card and the main event,
Hmm.
but this will definitely be a big selling point for any pay-per-view that it's on. So I think for a
Absolutely.
co-main event and styles make matchups here. I think it's a great fight. It's high time that you know, Ian Gary tests the waters, and I think nobody better than Colby. I
Hmm.
think Leon showed levels in that last fight that Colby and him had,
Hmm.
and at this point, I think Colby Gile, this matchup has to be there to keep some sort of relevancy that he's defeating someone who's upcoming in the division. And Gary Gillett, obviously, if he defeats Colby, a guy who's been interim champ, who's been in what 4 title fights at this point,
Right, right, right.
so I think it's a great thing for him. And you never know if Gary beats Colby decisively. Maybe he gets a title shot next. You never know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Like, I think Ian Gary के लिए तो ये perfect scenario है. But then also for Colby, like, if let's say if Ian Gary's wrestling is, not that good, like because he hasn't really been tested up until now, like till now, like this will be his first real test. So even for like I kept saying कि भाई ये Ian Gary के लिए perfect setup है कि भाई you're fighting an older guy, तुम अपना argument भी बना सकते हो कि मैंने wrestler को हरा दिया, but at the same time this is a very good fight for Colby as well, especially if
Yeah,
Ian Gary's wrestling is not there, right? तो
not there.
Colby के लिए भी because one thing is for sure that Colby is going to talk a lot of trash, right? बहुत
Yeah,
trash talk करेगा वो Ian Gary को, and if he goes out there and dominates Ian Gary, let's say he wins 50-45, like he just
yeah.
wrestle fucks him, sort of. तब तो भाई उसकी stocks और ऊपर जाएंगी कोलबी के. And
Hmm.
knowing MMA fans, since everyone hates Ian Gary, I think Colby, this is a good chance for Colby to win his fans back. But also a good chance for Ian Gary because a lot of people hate Colby as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's an
yeah.
interesting matchup. But I'll
I
be
think
very
Ian
sad.
Gary.
I'll be very sad because I'll be very sad if the Wonder Boy fight never happens. The Wonder Boy fight is the fight that I really want to see versus Ian Gary.
Yeah.
That's a dream matchup because the thing with Wonder Boy is that it does not matter how old he is. If
Hmm.
it is a striking matchup, he can beat anyone,
Anyway.
anyone in the division. Like it just does, the age is not a factor at that point. He can just beat anyone. So that matchup excites me a lot. But I can see why Ian Gary would not take that fight. One,
Hmm.
he's Stephen Thompson is not higher than him in the rankings, and again,
Yeah.
it's a tough matchup, man. It's a really tough matchup for Ian
Very
Gary.
tough.
Yeah.
I think if it just comes down to kickboxing, then Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can
Yeah.
just
And
about put anyone out,
Uh,
irrespective of the
yeah,
age.
and Wonder Boy has nothing to lose as well in that fight, so
Yeah,
he'll just go all out there, and Ian Gary will have everything to lose in that fight.
true. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Tough for Colby, यार. But here's my take on it. I am really not sure कि Gary की wrestling कैसी है. But
Hmm.
I think when it just comes to physicality, stature, and build, Gary is
Hmm.
somewhat built like Leon Edwards.
Hmm.
So I think this would also be some sort of a fight for Colby to figure out what went wrong in the Leon fight. You know,
Hmm.
he'll have a lot of chances to close the distance, figure out
You're
how
right.
I
You're
can
right.
overcome
Hmm.
those kicks, and I want to impose myself on him, which he was not able to do with Leon because, of course, Leon is a sniper. Those
Hmm.
kicks, good at range, and of course, the wrestling is also there as well.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, I think just from a striking point of view, if Gary does like to fight on the outside, it's good for Colby because Colby will try to figure out how he can close in and how he can impose on himself on someone who's trying to fight from distance. And if ever Leon के साथ fight होती है यार in the future, so
Hmm.
I think he'll have something better to offer.
For sure, bhai. I think that's the biggest thing for Colby to figure out right now. But I think the reason why he was hesitant against Leon is because he probably saw how Leon did versus Usman, in terms of grappling exchanges. Although
Yeah,
Usman did get the better of him in terms of pure wrestling, but
yeah.
he could see, right? You could see that Leon is no joke when it comes to like just grappling, right? Especially with these
Yeah,
guys. So I think that was one of the biggest reasons why Colby was hesitant. And obviously, again, Leon punished his legs so much. He punished Colby's legs like a lot. Every time Colby tried to close the distance, his leg was getting like butchered, literally. So Ian Gary again, if Ian Gary can do that, but then again, you have to have a strong base in wrestling, and the fact that we have never seen Ian Gary do what Leon has been doing in terms of grappling, I think that will give Colby the confidence. He
mm,
whether it's delusion or whatever, like Colby will not be afraid to like go for the takedowns, right? Because he knows that he can't like from what he has seen Ian do in his previous fights, he has nothing to be scared of, Colby, right? So yeah, it can be an interesting matchup for sure. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. But great fight, and hopefully both fighters get better fights and
Hmm.
try to get wins. But moving on to the co-main event, yeah, and I think it's safe to say that I look like Paulo Costa's manager at this point. So, great fight, yeah, very good fight. I think,
Yeah.
irrespective of the tweets that Costa actually puts out, the trash talk, and how many
Hmm.
times he's pulled out, he has definitely shown that ring rust for him does not exist.
Absolutely, man.
Against a guy like Robert Whittaker, who has lapped the division, beat everyone. I think in a world where Izzy doesn't exist, we can agree that Robert Whittaker is the man in the middleweight division, undisputed. But I mean, I don't know where to start from here. I think the first round was a banger. I was convinced after the first round that if this could be fight of the year, and I still feel this could be.
Yeah, for
What do
sure.
you think? How did the fight go?
Up until now, like for sure, it's probably the best fight we have seen till now in the last 2 months. But yeah, again, what you said about the ring race, right? So one of the things that I find interesting in this card is that so every single fight we learned something. Like we learned one thing about one guy and one thing about the other guy. That one guy's stocks raised and one guy's stocks dropped, and in some
Yeah,
cases significantly dropped. Like in Kopilov's case, in Henry Cejudo's case,
yeah,
maybe it hurts to say this, but in Volk's case as well, right? Their stocks have dropped a lot. But in this case, like I think. both the fighters like pretty much showed out. Like both of them were really good, and Costa's stocks are like just going up from this point. Like the way he performed against
Definitely.
Whittaker after not fighting for such a long time, I think he did pretty well. He did really good, and again, Whittaker is what? Whittaker is probably a top five middleweight of all time, right?
Easily.
When it comes to pure skill, he could you could argue he's even top three, right? So he
Yeah.
has one of the best resumes ever in the middleweight
Yeah.
division. So to lose to Whittaker and to hurt him that bad, as bad as he did in the first round, I think Costa had a really good performance, and I'll
Yeah.
be excited to see his next fight. But again, both the fighters impressed me a lot. For Whittaker again, this is what we were. The thing with Whittaker is that you know what we expect from dominant champs. We start to expect the same from guys like Max Holloway and Robert Whittaker. It's insane. We expect these guys to just dominate every single contender. Like,
Yeah.
you should expect that from the champions, right? So it just shows what level these guys are at. So
Yeah.
Robert Whittaker again, man. I'll be so intrigued to see his fight against Sean Strickland because that's the only fight that makes sense for him now. I think he's fought pretty much everyone outside of Sean Strickland. Like of course he hasn't fought Alex Pereira, but then Alex Pereira is already moving up a division, so that fight is not going to happen. But then again, I'm not much interested in seeing Whittaker versus Izzy. If they could make a matchup between Whittaker and Hamzat, that would excite me. But I don't know
Yeah.
if Hamzat would take that fight. I have doubts about that. Yeah.
And strong chances that that fight could be for the interim belt. And
Oh
if
yeah.
that's the case, then I think rounds 4 and 5, Hamzat could
For
really
sure.
get exposed.
For sure. Like I've like I don't know if you remember, but when Hamzat had started fighting, when he was on that run, incredible run after he beat Li Jingliang also, like we all
Yeah.
talked about the bad matchups for Hamzat, and the two names that we came up with were Kamaru Usman and Robert Whittaker. Like these two guys would be his
Yeah.
hardest matchups. Like we all talked about it all the time, and we have already seen it against Usman, and
Yeah. We have.
I think Whittaker is even worse for Hamza. Like he's even worse
Yes.
because uh, he's a much better striker, and I think he packs a
Yes.
lot of power as well. Like Whittaker's power is quite underrated. I mean, Costa has a pretty insane chin, to be fair. Like he did not even
Yeah.
get dropped by Yoel Romero, so that's he just has an insane chin. But Whittaker has a lot of power as well, and when it comes to cardio, like it's not even close. Like Hamzat, we have seen he cannot fight past 2 rounds. He just has to prove us
Yeah.
wrong, of course. Like I still believe in his talent, but then yeah, that fight is like as of right now I think it's far from happening. Like it's far from the truth. Like it won't happen. But I would be very intrigued to see him fight Strickland. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say that if a guy can walk into a brick wall that everyone is scared to face and get punched by in Yoel Romero and go 50 minutes with him in the octagon, I mean, उस बंदे को तो यार मौत से भी डर नहीं लगेगा.
सही
तो
बात है भाई.
Paulo Costa, ठीक है, he's good, but Whitaker was not scared at all. He was there. He wanted to make it bloody. He was ready to do everything, and that is exactly what he did. The
Hmm.
first round arguably could be close.
Hmm.
I think Whitaker got in a few very good low leg kicks, and we could see that bruising on Costa's left leg. And
Hmm.
I think rounds 2 and 3, though, I think arguably very easily you could have scored in Whitaker's favor.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. मेरे हिसाब से तो देख यार, if we go by the new rules, the new rules say that the damage trumps everything, right? So in that regard I understand people making the argument for Costa in round 1, but other than
Hmm.
that I think rounds 2 and 3 were like, in my opinion, Whittaker took them easily. Like
Easily. Yeah.
so I think there was no doubt about who won the fight. But then again,
Yeah.
yeah, Costa's stocks, man. Costa has been like his kicks, man. I just want to talk about his kicks. Like मेरे हिसाब से यार, I have seen the only two guys that I think are better kickers than Costa in the middleweight division are Luke Rockhold and Izzy. And obviously
Yeah.
Luke Rockhold is like retired now; he's not gonna come back. But in recent times, I think these two have been the best kickers in the division. Like
Hmm.
उसके बाद अगर देखा जाए तो Costa's kicks, I still remember his fight against Marvin Vettori, and that fight it happened in the Apex as well, where you can just every single strike sounds like a bomb dropping somewhere, right? So and in Costa's case, bro, the kicks, the sound of those kicks were insane,
Yeah.
and he's got some of the best kicks I've ever seen, man. Like insane. The way the, he almost knocked Whitaker out, and there was no telegraph in that kick. Also, it
Yeah.
was insane, man. I'm very
Yeah, the
excited to
kind
see
of
who he fights next.
the kind of girth and the kind of bulk he carries on his body, and you don't even get to know
I'm
when
glad you
those
said
kicks
body,
come.
bro.
Yeah. and and they slap, yeah. It's literally like a whiplash. I mean, even with a packed arena, you could
You're not
hear
helping it, man.
how much. Yeah. I
It
know I'm
slaps.
not,
It
but
slaps.
but you get the point. You get the
Yeah, man,
point.
for sure, bro. Like he's got some of
Uh,
the best kicks in the division. But what's next for Costa? What do you think is next for Costa?
what's next for Costa? Yeah, as I can see, Costa is seventh in the division right now. Brendan Allen is above him. Marvin Vittori has already fought and lost to. Jared Cannonier is somewhat of a placeholder right now at fourth. Whitaker, Adesanya, Strickland makes no sense, and then obviously it's Duplessis.
Hmm.
Uh, Costa could fight Brendan Allen. What do you think? How is that match? Or otherwise, he could fight Imaev,
Yeah,
who's one place below him.
I think Brendan Allen would be a very interesting matchup because one thing about Brendan Allen is that he's been on a very good streak. I think he's won like 5 or 6 in a row now, and
Mhm.
most of them have come by submission. He's a very good wrestler, very good grappler, and Costa again. Costa can be a very bad matchup for Brendan Allen in my opinion. But again, he could be the fight where Costa can redeem himself. Both of
Mm.
them have the chance to up their stocks a lot in this fight. But if not Brandon Allen, then you can also do maybe Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson, just to give Costa someone down the rankings, just to see where he's still at. Who better than Jack Hermanson to tell us where the other fighter is at, right? Because we already
That's
know what Jack Hermanson is all about, and we just
yeah,
have to see if Costa can still, we did see it in bits and pieces against Whitaker, but then again, he's got to win, man. He's got to win because it all comes down to the fact if you're winning or not. Because it does not matter how talented you are. We have seen that over and over again in, let's say, Peter Yan's case, right? Everybody seems to have forgotten who Peter Yan is simply because he has lost 3 in a row now. And
yeah,
you could still argue that he's probably the most skilled bantamweight in the world. Like you can still make that argument, but then it's of no use because he's lost so many fights. So I think Costa desperately needs a win. He's been losing
yeah.
too much. He lost to Marvin Vettori, he lost to Izzy, he lost to Whitaker, and I just against Luke Rockhold, people thought he should have finished Luke Rockhold because Luke Rockhold has had been inactive for so long. He was so
Mm.
old, so gassed, so washed. Like after the first round, Luke Rockhold he looked like he was about to die in the octagon, and he still couldn't finish Luke Rockhold. So I think Costa needs a dominant win, and we could see it happening
Yes.
against either Jack Hermanson or Brandon Allen. But again, you said Imavov. Imavov could be a very, very bad matchup for Costa, in my opinion. Like, that would be a banger of a fight because both are such elite strikers. But I just think Costa, if I'm Costa's manager, I'm telling him not to take that fight right now because that fight is just a horrible, horrible matchup for not just Costa, I would say for both guys. Like, it's a very risky fight for both guys to take, yeah.
Yeah, that's that's true. But Whitaker from here, yeah, I think there's just two things that he can do.
Hmm.
Wait for some time, but I think he's just lost to Drickus, and Drickus is not really losing the belt anytime soon.
Hmm.
So, Sean Strickland, next fight, when does it happen? How does it turn out to be, in your opinion? And does Strickland take the fight? I think he does.
I don't think that's going to be a problem because both guys are such dogs. Like they would just agree to fight anyone. I think Strickland and Whitaker. So that is out of the window because that question is out of the window. But at the same time, I think there is no other matchup to make because Robert
There is
Whitaker, if you
no
look at his resume, he's just defeated everyone there is to like beat. So the only two guys that he hasn't beaten are Izzy and Duplessis, right? Those are
yeah.
like the two best fighters in the division. So when it comes to Strickland, the matchup is interesting because again, Strickland can do exactly what he did to could do to Rob, exactly what he did to Izzy, right? Because
Yeah.
I think being an elite boxer who can also check, who can also deal with the kicks. It's such a bad matchup for these complete kickboxers. I think it's a very bad matchup for these guys. Obviously, it did not work against Alex Pereira because Alex Pereira is just a different beast. You cannot even see where his kicks are coming from. He
Yeah,
does not telegraph
yeah,
his kicks at all. But in the case of guys like Izzy and Whitaker, who are not, I think Whitaker is slightly a better boxer than Izzy. Uh, Although Izzy is a much better kickboxer, I think Sean could give him a lot of problems because one thing that we have seen in Rob's fights is that he struggles a lot with the jabs. He struggles a lot with the jabs. He struggled against Duplessis, he struggled against Izzy, and even in this fight against Paulo Costa, like Paulo Costa was jabbing him up really good. And the best jabber in the division is by far Sean Strickland. So that could be a
yeah.
huge
Yeah,
problem for Whitaker.
that is.
And
Hmm.
Whitaker's chin is like, sort of suspicious again. Like it's always been suspicious. Strickland does pack somewhat of let's say he's not a one punch KO guy, but then again he does have a lot of power. He can
He
certainly
has,
hurt.
that fizz in his punch.
Yeah, he can certainly hurt Whitaker. So it's an
I think
interesting matchup for me, man. Like either I would say Rob would be a slight favorite. Not there is no heavy favorite in this fight. It's a very close fight.
I think with Strickland, it's more like he doesn't pack the power, but you know how Stipe has that one signature
Right,
short
right,
left hook
right,
that comes in fights, and he
right.
just catches you out of nowhere. So I see Strickland being able to do that, but
Mhm.
and I think the biggest difference between Izzy versus Strickland and Rob versus Strickland has to be that I think Izzy in his last few fights was a bit hesitant to fight in the pocket and to engage,
Mhm.
barring that Alex Pereira fight. And I think even in that, Izzy got cornered.
Mhm.
Like the octagon wall was right behind him. I think what makes this fight interesting is that uh, Robert Whittaker is ready to go toe to toe in just about every department, and of course he adds that particular wrestling aspect to it too. So if you know if Strickland wants to make it dirty, fight up close, Whittaker is all game for that. He's not going to be like Izzy that I'll try to fight on the outside, just take it round by round. So I think that's what makes this fight interesting. And I think if two fighters are there, fighting in the pocket, trying to make it dirty, which I feel can happen because both of them will not hesitate, then that fight could go either way. But
Mhm.
again, given the fact and the context and how experienced Robert Whittaker is in this division, yeah, slight favorite definitely has to be Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And I would be like, I would love to see that fight, man. I would be very excited for that fight to happen. I think let's just move on to the next fight, like Ilya Topuria and Alex. I think
You wearing the Madrid jersey at this point just says it all because you were supporting
average
Topuria.
Madridista Chad, bro. Average Madridista Chad, but at the same time, man,
And
I have to admit, I'm very sad for Volk, bro. I'm very sad for
I,
Volk.
at this point, me wearing the Liverpool jersey and supporting Volk just kind of sums it up because it was the final and the loss ended up happening. Sad, yeah, because we'd seen this guy being a near 10, a near perfect who was dominating in every particular aspect in this division. There were no possible loopholes in this game.
For sure.
Some people, including me, might say that he still took the fight too early, but I'm not taking any credit away from Topuria at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, I know, I know.
But I think Volk needs to clear his head, relax. I think the fact that when he lost to Makachev, he said that, I need to keep busy. Doesn't really work every time in your favor. So he needs to kind of regroup, talk to his coaches, and just take some time off in general. And I think by that time, Topuria can have a title defense. Maybe if it's against Holloway or somebody else.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think a lot of people did expect this to happen, and finally, I feel the torch has been passed on. Topuria has arrived, and he has arrived how? Because this I feel is the biggest feather in Topuria's cap till date. Featherweight, Volk was undefeated, and Topuria just did it. Yeah, he just did it, and in what fashion?
हाँ भाई बिल्कुल यार एंड मेरे लिए तो यार एक चीज़ है कि मैं बहुत टाइम से बोल रहा था ये काफ़ी टाइम से मेरे को यही लग रहा था कि पूरे बिल्डअप में फाइट के अब मैं ये बहुत रो भी रहा था इस बारे में कि यार चाहे जो हो जाए इस फाइट में टुपुरिया को तो चलो बहुत ज़्यादा सुनने को मिलता फैन से क्रिटिसिज्म मिलती बिकॉज ही टॉक सो मच शिट अबाउट वोल्क बट
Yeah,
मैंने ये चीज़ तो बिल्कुल सोच रखी थी अगर टुपुरिया गलती से भी जीत गया सो इट्स लाइक even if he wins in a dominant fashion, people are not going to be convinced, right? Because everybody knows Volk is coming off of a brutal KO loss, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, man. That's like it's like I'm not taking anyone's sides because I understand both the arguments. I understand that Volk is coming off of a crazy KO loss, but then again, while we understand that his chin is not going to be the same, it's him ultimately who's taking up the fight, right? And if he's not
Yeah.
making those excuses, I don't think we as fans should make that excuse, right? Of course,
Yeah.
unless I'm a delusional fanboy, that's a different scenario. Of course,
Yeah.
if I'm a fanboy of Volk, of course I'm going to use that argument for
Yeah.
sure. But realistically, he took that fight because he thought he was ready to take it, right? So
Yeah.
in just because of that, I think Tupuria deserves all the credit. And the thing with Tupuria is that it's not like this was some random knockout win for Tupuria. He's finished every single guy he has faced like this, right? Not every single guy, but pretty much all of the
Yeah.
guys that he finishes. It's the same
Yeah.
combination. It's the same in pocket boxing. It's the same insane
Yeah.
combination that he goes to the body once, then he go up top. It's just insane. That combination is just money, man. Like it just works on every single fighter that he faces, and his boxing is so crisp, and you just had that feeling in the fight that I am I'm gonna say this. As much as I love Volk, I think Tupuria does this to any version of Volk. Like he can, if and Volk even said it in the post-fight press conference that if you are in that position against someone like Tupuria, it does not matter who you are. It does not matter if you're in
Yeah.
your prime or not. You are getting slept because
Yeah.
he perfectly, trapped Volk in that corner.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very impressed by Tupuria, man. And again, as you said, it's the passing of the torch. I think it's time for Volk to take some rest. The next fight should be a rematch, but I don't think it should be anytime soon. So there's no point really talking about what Volk's next fight should be because I think it's quite obvious that he needs some rest and the dude needs to fight Ilya again, right? For sure. But for Ilya, man,
Wo-
who do you think Ilya
wo-
should fight next?
uh, yeah, I think logically, though, given the fact that what the second and the third, right, Ortega and Yair Rodriguez are fighting in the division like just tomorrow as we're recording this,
Hmm.
and given the fact that Max Holloway is up there, he's been, I think, more than anything, Max Holloway would be thanking Ilya Topuria because he's back in the mix. He's back to fight for the title. So I think that fight makes the most sense at the moment. But
Hmm.
at the same time, since the knockout has happened, Volk has not given any excuses.
Yeah.
Class act as usual, but Volk has been heavily lobbying for a rematch.
Hmm.
So I'm not really going to be surprised if the UFC immediately rebooks it. But at the same time, if the UFC books it within like let's say 5 or 6 months, it makes sense. But मुझे genuinely लगता है that till then Topuria does make a defense
Hmm.
of his title.
And he should
So I
because
think
कुछ damage भी नहीं लिया टपोरिया ने.
yeah. So I think logically the next best fight is Max Holloway. Now I think it's Max Holloway who needs to do his homework because I think Topuria is here and he's here to stay for a good amount of time till somebody doesn't solve the puzzle that he is. So Holloway needs to be very careful in taking that fight, yeah. And Holloway being one of my favorite fighters, and I was backing him in every fight against Volk. I'll be very honest. So I really hope that Holloway is able to pull off an upset.
But there's a big thing here like हमें ये भी इस consideration में लेनी होगी कि भाई Max is fighting Justin Gaethje just like
Yeah,
in the next 2 months. So it all
yeah,
depends on how that fight ends up, right? Like because let's say even if Max wins, I think it's going to be a war, man. Like I don't see a scenario where Max wins and it's just and I don't see a scenario where Max finishes Justin, to be honest, right? If he can win, if he wins, I think it's most likely going to be on a decision, and if it's going to be a decision, it's going to be a war. Like Max will take a
it's
lot of
true.
damage from Justin for sure. Like that is for sure. So if he takes a lot of damage, will he be fighting Ilya in the next 6 months? I don't think so, man. Like I think that's a tough ask for Max, and maybe he can maybe he just rushes into it and just to like get the title fight before anyone else, but then it could be a very bad idea as well
It was a
because
bad decision for
yeah,
him.
it could be a very bad decision for him and we could
Yeah,
see Max getting knocked out. We don't know, right? That's the thing. So but if I'm being honest, like let's say if Justin Gaethje wins, let's say if Justin Gaethje wins in a dominant fashion, that could that could hurt Max's chances, to be honest. Like,
It could.
I know people are going to say, but it's at lightweight, so it shouldn't affect his ranking at feather. But it just does not work like that, man. It just does not work like that. If he takes a brutal beating, number one thing would be that he would need a lot of rest, and the number two thing would be, would the fans be interested in seeing Max face a puncher just like a puncher who's just as crazy as Justin Gaethje? Like Ilya Topuria packs a lot of power as well, right? So that fight could lose a lot of stocks in my opinion. So but again, if Max wins, he's the next guy.
Justin Gaethje, तो यार, fighting that guy is like getting into a full-fledged road accident and you've been hit by a truck. And I
Hmm.
think you lose more than the average number of brain cells while you're fighting Justin Gaethje when you when than the average fight
For
in the
sure, for
UFC.
sure, yeah.
That's definitely a scary fight. And again, I think yeah, Max wins this by decision by being
Hmm.
very clinical because irrespective of what happens, Gaethje is just out there to enjoy and have fun and just knock people out. That's why
बिल्कुल भाई
he's the
बिल्कुल.
highlight. So it's a very risky fight, and I hope Max kind of plays it safe.
Hmm.
So even if even I would say that even if he fights Gaethje now and he wins, he should still take some time because that fight really takes a toll on you as a
बिल्कुल
fighter.
बिल्कुल 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 बिल्कुल.
So I think the next 4 or 5 months are free for Ilya Tupuria. I think
Yeah,
he
yeah,
can
yeah.
sit back, relax, and try to figure out who he's gonna get next.
Yeah, yeah, for
And from
sure.
there on, he can enter camp.
It's been a great card, man. Great card, but a sad one as well. A sad one, but we learned a lot from this card. We learned a lot from this card. There was a big passing of the torch. So really
Yeah.
excited for tomorrow's card as well. So let's wrap up the session, man.
Let's wrap up the session, bro. Great card. We'll be back for the next few cards
For
next
sure,
week
for
for
sure.
Ortega versus Yair and UFC 299 and thereon. And it's been great, bro.
Yeah, it's been great, man.
See
See you, bro. See you.
you.